Let's begin tonight with Evelyn Farkas, Executive Director of the McCain Institute. She's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Obama administration. Ms. Farkas, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Thank you, Joshua.
So it could have been 10 years. It ended up being 9 years. What do you make of the sentence?
Well, unfortunately, I think the sentence was a foregone conclusion. The way the Russian justice system works is very different from ours. There is no real justice. The government already decided from the get-go that she was going to be guilty, whether she actually put in a guilty plea or not, which of course she did. And they likely already decided they were going to give her a long sentence. And the remaining question, of course, is, as you mentioned in your opening comments, now what will the Russian government do? Will it respond to the U.S. expression of interest in having a prisoner swap?
Brittney Griner's coach on the Phoenix Mercury, Becky Hammond, is calling for her release, even still now that the sentence has come down. Here's part of what she said.
So to see, Brittney being detained, like I said, it's upsetting. We want her to come home, and I just asked the Russian government to do the right thing. It's never too late to do the right thing, and I think at this point, like I said, whether she did or didn't, it's time to send her home.
What does that path look like to getting Brittney Griner home? I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, I'm sure, because the Russian system is rather opaque from here, but what's your sense of what the path might look like?
Yeah, I mean, first I would just say, in response to the comments by the former coach, the Russian government doesn't care what the right thing is, and they've already done the wrong thing in this case and many others like it. So unfortunately, I wouldn't hang my hat on that. But what I would hang my hat on is the self-interest of the government. So as you indicated, the Russian government has for years wanted to get Victor Bout back out of the U.S. custody, out of a U.S. jail, and get him back to Russia. He has ties to the Russian government. Certainly his arms trade that he was involved in was extensive. And if it wasn't at the direction of the government of Russia, it certainly was done with the knowledge of the government of Russia. So they want him back. They've wanted him for a long time. That's their interest in all of this. So we can appeal to them. But I believe that the Biden administration is also trying to get Paul Whelan back, which would be the right and proper thing to do. He's been held wrongfully also in the Russian prison system for much longer than Brittney. So they both need to come home.
We'll talk more about Victor Bout in just a second, but what is your sense of whether or not the Russian government is actually open to that kind of a swap? I mean, Brittney Griner's team says they're filing an appeal. Paul Whelan's family is obviously hopeful for what could happen. How open do you think Russia actually is to that? Or would they want to just throw Brittney Griner in jail just to make an example of her, just to make a point?
Yeah, I mean, Joshua, I'd say that they're probably maybe 60%. They're slightly more than, or somewhat more than 50% open to it. They really want this man back. Having said that, I can't really predict what the Kremlin's going to decide, and they clearly are enjoying putting the White House and President Biden in an uncomfortable situation. This is a very high-profile Olympic athlete, a woman who nobody wants to see in jail wrongfully, and certainly not in a Russian jail where the beds probably aren't even long enough for her. We know that they weren't actually in her initial confinement. So, the Russian government is probably going to drag this out. I mean, it's hard to tell exactly, but they like making the United States embarrassed, and their population doesn't know all the details of this. They only see what they get handed to them on Russian television.
How important is this, you think, to the Russian government? There's a lot going on right now with Russia between, the relations with Europe and oil and energy sales and Europe's efforts to pull itself away from Russian energy and the war in Ukraine. Put this in context with everything else that we're talking about with Russia right now.
Well, I think it gives Vladimir Putin some leverage, Joshua. He knows that in the back of the mind of the president of the United States, has to be concerned for the Americans being held by the Russians in terms of everything we do. Having said that, we know what U.S. national interest is in Ukraine. It is to defeat Russia on the battlefield and, frankly, to give Ukraine every weapon that it needs to do that. But it is complicating the situation. And that, I think the Russians like to, they like that. The other thing is that they are constantly trying to show that the United States is weak and that the U.S. government can't protect its citizens. Look at what can happen if you break a law. You know, of course, she didn't break a law as far as we know, but if you break a law, the U.S. government can't protect you. And that also is in the Russian government's interest. They really want to show that the United States is a weak power, that democracy doesn't protect anyone, that it's a bad system of government. Of course, the opposite is true. Brittney Griner got scooped up in an authoritarian system with no rule of law, and that's why we're in this terrible situation, or her family and loved ones are in this terrible situation, and as is she.
Evelyn Farkas, appreciate you starting us off tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joshua.